Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
2 days ago, I was back in Virginia. We were getting ready to head to Florida for the Secondchancer cruise, which is a fundraiser for Second Chancer Foundation. But now I'm in the hospital, and I've got all kinds of beeping things and boxes and things yelling at me and people yelling at me. And yeah, this was not a good choice. So the first time I wrecked my motorcycle in August of last year, everybody said, this is time. You need to give it up. And I was like, no, I don't feel like it. Like, I realized I made a mistake. This time, I don't remember anything. I have no idea how I went from riding the motorcycle to wrecking the motorcycle and almost tearing my arm off in the storm drain. I just don't get it. So for that reason, I think, yeah, it might be time. It might be time to hang up the keys and just say, you know what? Let's do like old people stuff. Let's do shuffleboard. Let's do something that's not going to rip my arm off in a storm drain. That said, this is the ultimate feeling of powerlessness. Having a big club of an arm that does not work, that I can't grab anything with, that I can't lift anything with, that I can't like point to anything with. It's basically just useless. So I am learning once again what it is to be powerless. I'm learning once again what it is to be grateful for the little things, including getting coffee this morning and having people take care of me because I can't take care of myself. And I feel really terrible for the people who signed up for the Second Chancer cruise because, again, I don't know that I can make it. I talked to the doctors. One of them was like, hey, don't tell anybody I said this, but maybe we could get you out there. Everybody else was very serious. They said, no, whatever you do not get on the boat on Sunday. So we're going to have to see how that happens. And I have other stuff in Florida, and I'm hoping to meet other people. But again, when somebody makes a commitment, the last thing I want to do is drop the ball and not show up for that commitment. But at the same time, I think I need to make a choice to not, drop the ball and not show up for myself when I just need to rest and heal.
How did I go from traveling the country, living out of my car, exploring places, meeting people, to being laid up on this couch with this weird, let's say, Frankenarm? I can't even fit it in a sling right now because I don't have help. You notice my hand is about twice the size it's supposed to be. God forbid you see the scars and the sutures and everything under there. Yeah, how did that happen? Well, let's go back. Depending on who you are, this could either be an update or this could be a brand new story, and it could be a cautionary tale. It could be an anatomy lesson, depending on the depth of how you want to go into it. But originally, in August of 2021, I was released from prison. I had spent 19 years inside, and at that point, the governor granted me a conditional pardon. With an hour and a half's notice, I went from having 10 years left of my sentence to being just kind of ejected into the world to start my life. Didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go, didn't know how to function. But I was really good at taking orders because that's what prison teaches you, to take orders, to do what other people tell you to. So someone told me to talk about my journey, talk about the period that I spent in prison, talk about the experience of getting out of prison. So 2 weeks after I got out, I got on social media and like a robot on top of a mountain kind of stared into a camera and made some, kind of conversational stuff about it, and ended up going viral. That led to a position to where I run a nonprofit, Second Chancer Foundation, where we work with incarcerated people, connecting them with mentors so they have a better chance of success upon release, where I speak across the country, where I have a book deal. My book is actually due, but this is obviously not helping. So anyways, I became the prison guy on social media. And then after 3 years, I wanted to stop being the prison guy. I didn't want to be defined by or kind of like led by that experience. I wanted to be me. I wanted to figure out who I was and what I wanted in the world. So when I got off probation, because the conditional pardon got me out, but I still had to do 3 years of supervised release. So after my conditional pardon was over and I was off probation, within 2 weeks, I packed everything I owned into my car and just drove across the country. Went down through Tennessee, went through Arkansas and Oklahoma and Colorado, down to California, all the way up, and then back across. Now, before I did this, I had a motorcycle. One of the things I had amassed in the 3 years I'd been out was a motorcycle. And I actually had two at one point. So at one point I had a Honda 919, which is kind of like a naked sport bike, but like kind of subdued, reasonable. And selling that or really giving it to a buddy of mine who got out of prison. And then I got a CBR 1000, who just the craziest thing known to man. Like at that point, I was driving an old Chevy S10 truck, so like a crappy little, truck. The motorcycle had more horsepower than my truck, if that tells you anything. It is a rocket on wheels. It's a terrible idea. I do not recommend it. So I had that, and one of the things I did was say, hey, it's about time. Let me get rid of this. So my buddy, actually the one that I gave the other bike to, I said, hey, I'll make you a deal. I'll sell you the bike. Just can you look out for me if I come back to town? So that way, if I drive out to California, but I fly back in, can I use the bike? So the deal was, anytime I came to town, I could use the bike, which was really convenient. Like I came back for speaking engagements, I just grabbed the bike, I had something to ride around on while I was here, and then I flew back to my car. After my 2 months on the road, I came back here, and one of the things he said was, hey man, let's grab the bikes and go for a ride. Because on top of my bike and the other bikes that he has his brother's bike, which is another crazy sport bike. So we said, yeah, let's do it. And something in my mind that morning told me I should probably like just take a chill. I even at one point told him over the intercom, like, man, I'm not feeling good, let's slow down. But about 10 or 15 minutes into the ride, I was fine. I was just used to it. I'd ridden motorcycles since I was a kid, felt comfortable. Later in that day, and I still do not know what happened. I literally was like, fine. And we went to go see his girlfriend's kids, and we were just kind of hanging out and talking. And next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital. I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? And they're like, you're in the hospital. You ripped your arm off. I'm like, come on, guys, my arm's right here. Like, I'm good. And they're like, no, seriously, like, you're bad. And I didn't understand. And what I didn't understand then is that I was concussed. I had a really bad concussion. So my brain wasn't working right. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Like, yeah, my arm hurts, but we can just go home now. Like, I don't want to spend a bunch of money on doctors and surgery. And they were like, no, you need to shut up and like stay here. You're in the hospital for a reason. And one of the things he told me was my arm was lacerated so bad, he had literally had to stick his hand inside of my arm to clamp on the artery to stop the bleeding. Because when he came around that corner and saw me on the ground, he said there was so much blood, he didn't think there was any way I was alive. So there I am, like having had somebody's hand in my arm. And that night, apparently, I didn't even remember this very well because, again, the concussion is not good. They had asked if I wanted a ketamine drip because the pain was so bad. And I said, sure. And then the interesting person said, well, would you like a soundtrack? And I said, yeah, ketamine, yeah. So if you ever heard, there's a song called Gooey by Glass Animals. I heard this when I was in prison. It's trippy and weird. And they made an entire playlist based on this. They played that and then they dug around in my arm. And one of my friends, my care team, was there, and she has a lot of experience with medical procedures. She's been around it a lot. And she said she was throwing up in her mouth because it was so intense to see them just digging around in my arm where the nerves were separated, where the arteries were ruptured, where like just, it was all sorts of problems. So again, at this point, I don't know it's such a big deal. I'm like, oh, I'll just get out of the hospital. Sure enough, I go into surgery. They managed to patch the arteries back together. The nerves, they can't entirely patch together, but they think it's good. And I can show you, like, the fact that I can touch my fingers is a good sign. I can't really move my arm, or not as a whole, but I can do that, which is a good sign. So all of a sudden, I'm there now the day after surgery, and I'm fighting to get out of the hospital because my past experience in the hospital was insane fees, like 15 or 20 grand just for a day in the hospital, not for anything. I mean, remember they had a PT walk in, or like a PT assistant walk in, ask me a question to leave, and like that was $750. And my insurance, the way it's set up, only has a cap for each thing. It's like, we will pay up to this amount for each of these things. So some people's insurance is like, okay, you can pay this much out of pocket and then we'll cover the rest. My insurance is like, we'll pay up to $50 or $500 and then it's on you. So I was really worried about that. So I managed to convince them to release me. But one, nobody had really explained to me, or I at least didn't understand, that I had a concussion. So my brain wasn't working well. And two, I still didn't understand how serious an injury was. I still didn't understand until later talking to doctors that most people who have an injury this severe either lose their hand or at least lose use of their hand. So the fact that I have a hand that works is incredible. The fact that I'm walking around, that I'm okay, is incredible. But I didn't get that. So I get home and I'm just like, oh, well, let me like get to work. But again, I don't really have a home because I just packed everything in my car and I'm traveling. So people have taken me in, and it's been amazing to have different places to go and crash. Like I'm on a couch right here. I had a buddy in Richmond take me in. He's got somebody who's a nurse practitioner who was incredibly helpful. I have a friend right down the road who took me in. People have just been incredible and generous and kind, but it's kind of chaotic because I was basically living out of a car. So all my stuff is in different little go bags. It's not really convenient. It doesn't really make sense. And I had to figure this out because the first thing is, one of the people on my care team, as a thank you for all the things she's done, she was going on the cruise with me this past weekend because for Second-Chancer Foundation, we were doing the Second-Chancer cruise, which was a bunch of people who wanted to come support what we were doing. We were going on a cruise out of Miami, Florida, and a portion of the proceeds were going to the nonprofit so we could connect more people with mentors. We could scale our program. Well, that obviously didn't happen. There was no way I was getting in a car or getting on a plane and going down to Florida. This week, I'm supposed to go do Thanksgiving in Florida with friends. It's kind of like Friendsgiving, this incredible guy that I met on the internet, who's kind of put together kind of an odd patchwork of people to do Thanksgiving. And I still really want to do this. Like, it's probably not the best idea considering the state I'm in to go travel across many state lines. But what I found is there's some things that kind of fill us up and there's some things that don't. When I find those people and those things that fill us up or that make us feel like more connected or more ourselves, I try to dive into those things. I think it's so important, and it's so easy to get caught in other things. I'm trying to figure out how to make it down to Florida in 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is, to do this Friendsgiving, spend a couple days down there with the good people that I'm around, and then make it back. The other thing is, because of my brain injury, because of the concussion, I haven't been able to work to the same degree. And if you know me, all I do is work. Like, my friends will tell me, like, put your effing phone down, like, just stop working, just hang out with us. And one of the things that I've learned is that my whole identity is tied up in working. So, like, I'm responding to emails, or I'm doing proposals, or I'm connecting with people, or I'm doing fundraiser, or I'm always on that spot. And when I'm not doing that, there's this question of, like, well, who am I, or what do I do? And I'm really struggling with that kind of internally because it lets me know how much I've fallen into those patterns. Because in a way, in prison, I was in a better place of being kind of like balanced and centered. Now, that being said, I was always hyper productive in prison. I was always reading or studying or working or tutoring or doing something else. But I feel like to some degree, I was still better grounded or better balanced. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that. So I got a bad arm. I don't really have a good prognosis. I went to a doctor follow-up, but it was with my GP, not the surgeons, not anybody else. And they basically said, okay, well, like, you have a lot of pain. That's really normal. Like, you cut your arm off. Like, it makes sense that it would be painful. They answered a couple specific questions, but everything else I had, they said, oh, you should talk to ortho or you should talk to wound care. And it's kind of like, well, why do I have a follow-up with you if you don't have any of the answers to the things I need? And don't get me wrong, they were very competent and very sweet and very wonderful, but it didn't really help the situation. So now I have a follow-up in the beginning of December with ortho and wound care. They're supposed to take the sutures out. Like, I'm kind of glad you can't see it because I really do have like a Frankenarm, like giant, ugly, jagged, like where they basically had to sew my arm back together. And it's just not pretty down there. But I also, like, I didn't know how much to clean this or how much to not clean this or how much to leave this alone. And we're trying to figure that all out now to make sure I don't lose my arm. Because as swollen as it is, this is probably a quarter or less of what it was originally, because my hand and my arm was just a giant stump. And it hurts now, which is not convenient. In the beginning, it didn't hurt, but it was just swollen and throbbing. But I guess I was so numb or I was still in shock, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I'm realizing, like, it's going to take a lot of PT to get back. And especially if I'm staying out of my car. Like this morning, a friend who's helping me said, you need to figure out where you're going to be and stay there for a month. And I don't know how the timing of this works, but I've got an invitation to be in the desert for New Year's Eve, which I would really like to take. A friend in San Diego who asked if I would come stay out there. So maybe I'll pick one of these places and just stay for a little while, because especially as I'm able to work again or be more productive, I have a lot to catch up on. I have a lot of emails, I have a lot of phone calls, I have a lot of backlogged stuff to do. And I'm in one of those positions where there really is no off switch for work. If I'm not making videos for social media, I'm doing phone calls, I'm doing dinners, I'm doing fundraisers. I'm just 24/7 kind of on. And so in a way, it would be nice to go to a place where I don't know as many people, where I'm not plugged in as well. And that way I can do my 8 hours, or I can do my work time, and then I can get out. I can just kind of like go sit by the pier, or I can just go walk through the city or do whatever else. The other thing is, when I gave up my lease and started traveling, I was looking for a place, but I was also looking for kind of a way to live. And I still hadn't figured that out. Like, I still don't know how I want to live. I know some things that I like doing. I know places that I like being. I know people I like being around, but I don't know how to be an adult in the world. I don't know how to balance work. I don't know how to balance projects. I don't know how to, I'm obviously not going to jujitsu or going to the gym to lift right now. So what do I do with my time? How do I spread that out? I have a really good book right here. I've actually got a box of books right there. Am I going to spend my time back in reading? Am I going to spend my time back in project stuff? Am I going to be able to finish the book the way it is? Because again, the book is due December 1st, and there's no typing going on with this arm, because that's me lifting my arm, like, to the best of my ability. Like, doing this with the other arm, that's all it does. So I don't know how we're going to get to the point where I'm typing and finishing, but this is the update about the fact that I had somebody dig around in my arm. I had a ketamine trip to the soundtrack of Gooey by Glass Animals, which was incredible. But mostly what happened was a friend of mine saved my life, because when he came across me, laid out on the ground, he was literally willing to reach his hand inside my arm and grab the artery and stop the flow of blood. And then since then, I've had people save my life by showing up day after day to take care of me, to help make me tea, to help me with food, to help me get dressed, to help me get set up, to help me get organized, because I couldn't do that in the beginning because of my mind. And now I'm struggling to do that because of my body, because I'm limited in the things I can do physically. I'm limited in things I can organize. I'm limited in things that I can lift. I'm just limited in general. And people are showing up and saying, hey, I love you. I want to be here for you. And it's a reminder to me that when I think about, or I question what I want to do or who I want to be in the world, the main thing is I want to be the kind of person who would show up for somebody else and do those things. I want to be the kind of person who would show up and make sure someone is okay, make sure someone is safe, make sure someone has their basic needs met, and sometimes hold them accountable. Like, I get yelled at for doing too much, or I get yelled at for maybe doing the wrong thing or focusing on the wrong thing, and I need that. I want friends who call me on my stuff. Like, yes, please make sure I don't, fall down these steps back here. Please make sure I don't go without eating. But also, when I do something dumb, call me on it. Like, when I have another motorcycle wreck, tell me, like, hey, it's probably time. And I'm like, you know what? I don't remember. And that's the most terrifying thing. I don't remember wrecking. It's not like, oh, well, I was taking this corner too fast and I leaned in and so I lost it. That would be comprehensible. I have no memory of what happened, and that's what scares me, because for all I know, I was riding crazy, but also for all I know, I was doing absolutely nothing wrong, managed to launch myself into a drain culvert and basically cut my arm off. And if that's the case, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be in that position. Maybe I'll go ride a motorcycle on a track. Maybe I'll go ride a moped in Spain. I don't know. But I don't want to be in a position where I could potentially do this to myself or to somebody else ever again, because this is so traumatic and life-changing. Again, I'm lucky that I managed to keep my hand or keep my arm. I don't know that I'll ever have full use again. The cognitive experience, the brain fog that I experienced, being stuck back, feeling like I'm lost out of space and time, I don't want to go through this again. I can't imagine it being worth it. And I loved motorcycles. With everything I had, I loved motorcycles. But I'm realizing now that we are not in control. That no matter how much, there's always going to be a risk there. And you know what? I don't think I'm willing to take that risk anymore. So I'm laying the bike down. I mean, I'd already sold it, and now I actually have to figure out how to make sure to pay for the bike that got messed up in the wreck and everything else. But most part, I'm ready to be calm. I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to stop my thrill seeking there, because I have a really full life. And now that I've built such a full life, I don't necessarily need to fill it with artificial thrills because I have people and challenges and work and meaningful engagements that are everything I've been looking for. And I think I needed motorcycles and I chased all the crazy stuff when I was younger because I didn't have that full life. But now as I do, I'm much more ready to let go of those kind of immediate things or those crazy things because I have things I can fall back on. I have relationships and work and things that actually fill me up, and I don't need to do those other things. But at the same time, that's why I think it's so important for me to get down to Florida in a couple of days, because that's a group of people that I really care about and that really make me feel like my best self. It's why I want to make it out to the desert for New Year's. It's why I want to make it out to see my friend in San Diego, because those are the places I go that I feel most connected. But for now, I got to figure out, okay, I'm going to finish this. I got to figure out how to get the stuff to wrap my arm and get somebody to help me wrap my arm because I got to rewrap it. And then I got to figure out what I'm doing. I guess repack all my stuff and figure out how to live out of my car when I can't even barely live out of anything. And basically get really good at asking for help and accepting help, which has been hard because I don't like it. I don't like asking for help. But what I found is, one, I need it. Like, that's a simple thing. And two, when people offer, and they really offer, not just like in passing, they really offer, and I accept it, it gives them something. They tell me thank you for letting them help. And I think about that. Like, when I help somebody or do something meaningful, it means a lot to me. So sometimes being the person that I want to be does not mean being toxically independent. It means being willing to accept help because that makes a difference to somebody else, and it definitely makes a difference to me. And I know how much I like or how good I feel when I help somebody else. So sometimes if somebody says, hey, I want to help you wrap your arm, or I want to help you with this, or help you repack, whatever, you know what? Thank you. Like, that's it. I can just say thank you. I can appreciate their help. I can enjoy it. And I can know that we've both gotten something out of that exchange. And the same thing is when I go help somebody else. Like, I can say, oh, well, I'm doing it because I want to be selfless. Well, no, I'm doing it because it makes me feel good to help somebody else, because I care about them, because I want to see them well. Like, there is a personal desire, even if it's about that person. But that's okay. That doesn't make it immoral to help people because I feel good when I help people. It doesn't make it bad to help people because I want to see them do well and I feel better when they do well. It just makes it part of the equation. So this whole accident has taught me a lot about asking for help. It's taught me a lot about how much I love being on the road, but also how much it's kind of nice to have a place to call home or have people to call home. And it also lets me know that, you know what, I don't know what's next, but it's definitely not what it has been. I think in some ways it feels like it's been the same for the last 3 years since I got out of prison. And now things are going to be different. I don't know if I'm moving somewhere. I don't know if I'm doing something different for work. I don't know if I'm just going to have a different experience. But I'm looking forward to seeing what different comes.